Palestine, which initiated this initiative, and my pleasure to welcome you all today and to thank you for coming, and also to thank the steering group of Jewish Network for Palestine for all their support, and also for the conveners of the Convivencia Alliance, who have put in 2 years of work developing this document. That means refining it and adding to it, and mostly adding to it. It's got longer and more sophisticated as we've gone on, but today we're very pleased to have reached the point where we're launching this document to the public, and we're grateful for all our speakers and supporters in doing that. I'm particularly pleased that Raza has agreed to chair the speakers, so I'll hand over to him and hope you have a very good and interesting afternoon. Thanks, Raza.
Okay, thank you very much, David, and I would like to echo David's welcome to you all, and just to talk about the breadth of the Convivencia Alliance. I'm also from the Islamic Human Rights Commission, so again, just as you go through this program, you will see the groups that are coming on board and moving this whole initiative forward. But without further ado, what I would like to do is invite Professor Chaim Bresheeth, sitting on my right, who'll be from the Jewish Network for Palestine, and an academic at SOAS, who'll be saying a few words about the Convivencia initiative from his perspective.
I want to welcome our friends from Neturei Karta that just walked into the room. It's really good to see you with us today. I want to ask 3 basic questions when we talk about Convivencia, and I'll explain what it is, but there is an article about it which you probably collected on your way in that explains it in greater detail than I can give it here. Now, when we're looking at the future of solutions for just and peaceful solutions for Palestine, why do we look into the past? This is the first question. The second one is what kind of philosophical and societal positions are discovered when we look at politics today? And the third one, how does the first 2 influence our thinking about the future? Now, we all know where we are in Palestine. We are in the doldrums after 75 years of a Zionist state, a militarized, racist, apartheid Zionist state. So that's where we are, with war crimes, with occupation, with settlement, with lack of equality, with Palestinians being killed day and night. That's where we are. How did we get there is not the topic today, and I'm sure everyone in this audience knows very well how we got here. We got here through the crime of colonizing a country that had a population that was stable, that included Jews for 2,000 years after the Second Temple has been destroyed. Jews lived in peace, in equality in Palestine with Christians and with Muslims. So anyone who tells you that this is not possible, that it is not possible that Jews would live with Muslims or Arabs in peace and equality is lying to you. And this is no part of Judaism. Racism of the kind that Zionism is now working under is not a part of Judaism. No racism should be part of Judaism. Jews have suffered enough racism to become racist themselves. And this is terrible that we are seeing what we are seeing. Now, how can we divide political positioning in the world today. This is a subject for some days, and I'll talk about it in a minute, because that's what we can do. We can divide the ideas behind international politics into two, without putting too fine a point on it. One of them, the normative mode of politics, is conflict. We know about that as we speak in the days of coming to 3 months of war in Ukraine. Conflict is a terrible and a criminal principle to direct politics. It produces more problems that it could even ever solve. It can't solve any problem. It can produce, and it does, many crimes and many problems. And this is what has happened in Palestine. Starting in 1948, 2/3 of the Palestinians were ejected from their country. There is nothing Jewish about this. There is nothing just about it. There is nothing liberal about it. And the worst thing is that having expelled 2/3 of Palestinians, we, the Israelis, refuse to let them in despite the UN resolution. So this is how conflict works. Conflict works through, first we get rid of them, then we say we can't have them back because they are not nice. Well, try to be nice when you lost your home. Try to be nice when you lost your country. Try to be nice when you can't even visit that country. So despite the UN resolution of the return of the refugees, no Palestinian refugees ever been repatriated to their own country. So if you look at the West and how it behaves through conflict. This is what NATO is about. This is what NATO was set up to do, is to take over more and more areas around the Soviet Union at the time. And this is what NATO is doing today. Having taken over all the countries that were part of the Soviet Union before 1991, it is now moving to the last 2 or 3 countries. And of course, Ukraine is the centerpiece. So when the Russians actually say, we want to talk, the Americans say there's nothing to talk about. Either you agree that NATO expands or go home. We are not talking to you. I think this is a terrible era of politics of the West, but it's not new. And Israel is the best example of it. It will talk to anyone apart from the Palestinians. It will come to agreement with anyone. And you know that, yeah? You know what happened recently in the Gulf. They will come to agreement, not about peace, not about equality, but about more money into arms that is going to be spent in the region, and Israel is taking a lot of, a big part of that. And in Israel, some people are really dancing for joy about the war in Ukraine, because Israel has doubled its arms exports since the war has started. This is what conflict means. Conflict is not I'm having an argument with you. Conflict is death and destruction when it comes to Israeli behavior. And then there is the other principle. And that principle, could I hazard, could I suggest to you that that principle comes from the 3 religions. Judaism is the oldest sister, the major religion that started the monotheistic drive in the Middle East. And all 3 religions have developed in a very small area. And that area is the area where Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived together in harmony. Not only that, of course, they lived like that for 600 years, more or less, in Spain. And in Spain, in Al-Andalus, existed an amazing culture, a culture of support, a culture of living together, of working together culturally and politically to create what became an incredible innovative culture that affected the Renaissance. The Renaissance is not possible to understand. Modern Europe is not possible to understand. The whole development of Europe, remember that at the time of the great flowering of convivencia, living together, living and working together. In Spain, Europe was a desert, a cultural desert, where anti-Semitism, racism was very strong, but nothing else. Not only that, Europe lost its culture, its basic texts, because of the Christian church animosity to pre-Christian culture. So the Greek culture, for example, was totally lost to Europe until Convivencia, because the Muslim Arabs translated those Greek great literature into Arabic. And then it was possible to translate it, and Jews and Arabs did the translation back into languages of Europe. So this is an example of the two attitudes to politics. The main attitude is conflict. Our attitude is convivencia. Why are we going back? To answer my own question, why are we going back in order to go forward? Because the past is a menu. There is no one past. There is no simplicity about the past. So Zionism goes to Joshua and his destruction of Palestine. That didn't happen, actually, in the way that Zionism is presenting itself. But it's interesting that what Joshua is doing is destroying not only men, children, women, etc., but even the animals. Yeah? So the whole population, supposedly, we know it didn't happen that way, but the biblical tradition that Zionism has chosen is the book of Joshua, because it is based on conflict, because it is based on destruction. While actually within Jewish tradition you can find so many humane and just epochs of living together. And I think we, the Convivencia Alliance, have chosen the name Convivencia because of what it says. It says that Jews, Christians, and Muslims can, should, and will live together in Palestine as they did before the coming of Zionism. Now, this is supposedly a difficult message. I don't know why it is so difficult. Why is it so difficult to recognize that this is what Jews did for thousands of years? Why? Why is it difficult to know and to accept that actually the highest point in European culture was achieved by coordination and collaboration and by convivencia rather than by conflict? Now, this is the message we want to send. We want to send a message of peace. We want to send a message of justice, and we want to send a message of togetherness. And thank God that we can do this in person rather than on Zoom. Because imagine talking about Zoom, about togetherness, yeah? So here we are together. We are asking all of you, who we know all of you, I know all of you, we've met many times before. What we need to do is to project, to transmit, to send this message of convivencia to everywhere, that everywhere in the public domain, which at the moment is actually sending a message of hate, is sending a racist message, is amplifying the message of Zionism, and the message of Zionism is a rejection of the other. The other happens to be a Palestinian. And remember that not so long ago, like the length of my life, because I'm a bit older than Israel by 2 years. So only the length of my life divides us from a point where the Zionists were the other in Palestine. And they did not want to be treated like they were treated in Europe. And they were not treated like they were treated in Europe. They were treated by the Muslims and Christians in Palestine as brothers and sisters. Read any book about a pre-Zionist period, and the first thing that jumps to you is how Muslims, Christians, and Jews come to each other at the religious festival of each group and help each other with preparation, with food, with gifts. This year, Passover, Easter, and Ramadan happened at the same time in April. And you know what? If we were in the 19th century, Jews, Christians, and Muslims will be walking from home to home, bringing gifts to each other. This is unthinkable now in Palestine. Why? Because of Zionism. No other thing is stopping it from happening, from taking over. So I think we don't want to discuss junk like the IHRA, imaginary anti-Semitism. The problems in Britain are much more serious than imaginary anti-Semitism. The problems are Islamophobia. The problems are the way we treat people that run away from war, that are accepted in every European country, and that are not accepted in this country. We have a culture which is hostile. Yeah, Britain has turned into a hostile environment, like Israel is a hostile environment. Let us talk about this all the time. Let us make the connections between what we see on our television screen now and what people forgot to talk about. And I'll end by saying this. The BBC is 100 years today. Okay? It started in 1922. In those 100 years, they have never talked all the 100 years together. Okay? There was no talk about Palestine, which was positive. There was no presentation of Palestine as a problem that can be resolved like they did in the last 2 months about Ukraine. Okay? This is what happens. If you want to talk about this as a solution, as a problem that has a solution, you can do it. You can do it tomorrow, you can do it in 5 minutes. This is a political decision to support Ukraine, but to reject Palestine. We reject that rejection. We call for all of us to come together because, like in the case of South Africa, we have the power to end apartheid and Zionism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Haim, for that very interesting, informative, and thought-provoking talk. Talking about a number of things. The past is a menu, and there is no one past. Though I would encourage all of you to put any questions together that you might have, and we'll have a Q&A afterwards. One of the things would be, what will be our menu for the future that we need to think about? And Convivencia, a message of peace, but including a message of justice within that whole concept of Convivencia. Now, without further ado, I would like to ask Masood Shajari, Brother Masood Shajari of the Islamic Human Rights Commission, to say a few words from his perspective.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Chair, and it really is a very delightful day for me because for a very long time, myself and some of my colleagues had this vision that we really want to move forward from this separation of division that we have been forced into, compartmentalized into Muslim, Christian, Jews, and people from different faith, and indeed none. And then we are coming together, we have been coming together on conferences and so forth, but really we never had a structure that could bring us together, focusing on trying to bring a change for better in our society, not just in Palestine, but indeed everywhere else, because that division and that demonization which is taking place in Palestine day in, day out, is actually affecting us, our life, the way we are living, the way we are interacting with one another. And for the last couple of years, we actually rejected all that, and as a convener and came together, and we were talking earlier on, that we really bonded together. We are almost a family now. We really are. I'm proud to say that. A family, focused family, not on just wishy-washy peace, but a practical thing of standing against injustice, standing against apartheid, standing against illegal occupation, standing against day in, day out abuses of everyone who is not a Zionist. And I want to repeat that. Everyone who is not a Zionist. I didn't say everyone who is not a Jew, but everyone who is not a Zionist. So, they're very accommodating to Christian Zionists, to Jewish Zionists, or even Muslim Zionists or secular Zionists. They're all part of the family. But they abuse the rest of us who stand up for justice, for supporting Palestinians. In reality, what is happening in their book, there is not a good pro-Palestinian sort of structure. Anyone who's pro-Palestinian is demonized, either as safe-hating Jew or as a sort of anti-Semite Christian, or when it comes to Muslim, is a terrorist, or terrorist sympathizer. So really, we have really had to come together. We have come together for another reason. I want to be very short because I'm speaking to the converted. But there are many people listening to this online, and many people will be listening to this in future. And my message is to all of us. Sorry, the sound is... Okay, it seems to be getting... The message is this, that to support Zionists is supporting apartheid, supporting war crimes, supporting colonialism, supporting sort of every negativity, supporting killing children, justifying all these things. And honestly, in any of the religions in the world, there is nothing more ungodly than, sorry, I don't know if these our mobile phones are causing the interference, but there's nothing more ungodly than this. So really, as a Muslim, as a Christian, as a Jew, and indeed as a humanist or as a secular person, we cannot accommodate these aspects of apartheid system in any way. The same situation we had in South Africa, as I'm highlighted. We stood up against the apartheid in South Africa. We weren't anti-white. We were against apartheid. And we weren't against apartheid in certain part of South Africa. Every inch of South Africa had to be cleansed of apartheid. So Muslims, Jews, Christians, and others could begin putting their lives together. It's not possible to do it under apartheid. Apartheid is the most ungodly thing. It's a racist thing, combined with the colonialism and the power of forcing people to submission. It's something we cannot accept. The point that I'm trying to make is that for a very long time, when people have come together under interfaith, was as a condition of supporting Israel and the Zionism, or at least not speaking out against Zionism and the illegal occupation and apartheid. They had to be either supporting it or to shut up and support it by their silence. Now, enough is enough. I think for religious groups and others to come together, as we believe, is a must to stand up against racism. It's a must to stand up against apartheid. It's a must to stand up against the brutal, illegal occupation. And what has created such an environment of hate in occupied Palestine and beyond that needs to be challenged by all of us. We inviting all our colleagues from different religious groups and none. Let's join hands together. Together, we could do it. Together, we will be powerful enough that we will stand against this the wind, which is trying to silence people and legitimize the state of Israel. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you very much, Brother Masood, for speaking about these issues, bringing together, highlighting the way that the interfaith has been used thus far in terms of bringing together Christian Zionists, Muslim Zionists, Jewish Zionists, to actually stop any kind of speaking up against the issue of apartheid Israel and silencing any those kind of discussions or dialogue from actually taking place and speaking up about justice, speaking up against racism. Now I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Stephen Sizer, who's the founder and director of the Peacemaker Trust, to say a few words from his perspective on this issue of and the Convivencia Alliance that we've put together. So, Dr. Reverend Sizer.
I've been looking forward to this day for a very long time. I became very excited when I first read the first draft of the Convivencia Declaration and was invited to help refine it. Because my dream has always been to see Jews, Muslims, and Christians working together to bring justice, peace, and reconciliation in Palestine. Because if with God's help we can achieve peace in Palestine with justice, we can achieve peace with justice anywhere. Anywhere. You know that the issue of Palestine has been the longest running dispute in the hands of the United Nations. That's why it's been an honor to work with the Islamic Human Rights Commission for many years, and in recent years also to be welcomed as a member of the Jewish Network for Palestine. I'm also on the trustee of Sabeel Kairos UK. Kairos is, as you may know from the notes, one of the supporting agencies or ministries working with Convivencia. It's painful to, and it's also been heartening to see Christian leaders in Palestine enthusiastic to join the alliance. I'm confident that British Christian leaders will join eventually. It's painful to acknowledge that many Christians justified slavery in the Americas, defended apartheid in South Africa, and supported Zionism in Palestine. It's sobering to realize that at least 9 out of 10 Zionists in the world today are Christians. The continued denial of Palestinian human rights is therefore largely a Christian responsibility. It's also becoming increasingly obvious as a result of numerous reports by Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, Amnesty International, the United Nations, Sabeel Jerusalem, that Zionism is implementing a form of apartheid in Palestine. But the roots of racism, supremacy, and segregation go back much, much further than the slave trade, or apartheid, or even pre-Convivencia Spain. The Hebrew scriptures, which are the foundation of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, acknowledge that God's people all too often assumed that God's promises were theirs exclusively. They equated chosenness with supremacism. Repeatedly through the Hebrew prophets, God reminded his people that they were chosen for a purpose, to be a light to the Gentiles, not a stumbling block. God intended his people to be inclusive of all nations, and his land his inheritance for all who acknowledge him. Through the prophet Isaiah, for example, God insisted all are welcome. Isaiah 56, let no foreigners who've bound themselves to the Lord say, the Lord will surely exclude me from his people. If God says, let no foreigners say, the Lord will exclude me, why would the foreigners say, the Lord will exclude me? Because God's people were doing the excluding. God says, foreigners who bind themselves to the Lord, to minister to him, to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants, who hold fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. Through the prophet Ezekiel, God insisted the land was to be shared. Ezekiel 47, you are to distribute this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. You are to allot it as an inheritance for yourselves and for the foreigners residing among you who have children. You are to consider them as native-born Israelites. Along with you, they are to be allotted an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. God says the same thing 3 times in 3 verses. Share the land. Why does God have to say something 3 times in 3 verses? Because they didn't want to share the land. And through the psalmist, God insists Jerusalem was to be shared. Psalm 87, I will record Rahab and Babylon among those who acknowledge me. Philistia too and Tyre along with Cush, and will say, this one was born in Zion. What do you get when you're born somewhere? You normally get a passport, citizenship. This one was born in Zion. Indeed, of Zion it will be said, this one and that one was born in her. The Most High will establish her. The Lord will write on the register of the peoples, this one was born in Zion. 3 times in 3 verses, God says these people, if they acknowledge me, are born in Zion. Why does he have to say it 3 times? Because they wanted an exclusive Zion. God's prophets, revealing the will of God, an inclusive identity open to all peoples on the basis of faith, not race, a land to be shared. I believe the Convivencia Alliance represents a contemporary expression of the prophetic tradition in its commitment of justice, peace, and reconciliation. That's why I'm here, and I hope that's why you're here too, to support this alliance at its very foundation. What does God expect of us? The prophet Micah leaves us in no doubt. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Stephen Sizer, for your words and your point of view from in the Convivencia Alliance, and you can see the breadth, the depth from different perspectives that has brought this together. And I think this refinement that has taken place over the 2 years, you can see a lot of the work that would have gone into this kind of thing, and I was party to some of those processes over that period of time. And it's been a privilege to see this outcome as we go through. I would certainly ask you to hold on to your questions. I'm sure there'll be questions that you've got to direct to the 3 people that have contributed thus far. There will be some contributions online from people from different parts. The first one will be Jeff Halper. He is a co-founder of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, and this is based in Jerusalem. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Halper, and I'm here to congratulate the initiators of the Convivencia Alliance on their very important initiative in establishing this alliance as a way of supporting the struggle for peace and justice and liberation in Palestine. As many of you know, I'm the head of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, and I'm also a member of the One Democratic State campaign. So I myself, as an Israeli Jew, who I call a settler who refuses, I see myself as a stakeholder, of course, in this struggle, and therefore, together with my Israeli Jewish and Palestinian comrades, we really welcome this kind of initiative, which is very important. You know, we're in kind of you're talking about a Convivencia Alliance. I've always talked about what I see as a tripartite alliance, of which you are a part. In other words, there's really two levels to this struggle in Palestine. One is, of course, the Palestinian struggle for liberation. That's their struggle. They have to define it. They have to lead it. They have to define what liberation means for them. We can all support them, and we have to support them, because in a way, the only ally the Palestinian people have are you in the international community. It's very similar in some ways to South Africa, where the ANC understood that they weren't going to get the support of whites in South Africa to dismantle apartheid. They weren't going to have the support of their government, obviously, of the apartheid regime. And they weren't going to get international support in the form of governments. And so they turned to their only ally, which was the people of the world that supported their struggle. Churches, religious organizations, trade unions, students, intellectuals, university groups, human rights groups, political groups, whoever. And the FLN actually, in the late 50s, early 60s, did the same thing in South Africa. So this is a strategy that's important. I think we all, and all of you abroad, have much more clout and influence than you realize, but you have to be mobilized. And of course, in a way, you and us as Israeli Jews, we have to follow the lead of the Palestinians. So that this tripartite alliance, of which the Convivencia Alliance will be a part internationally, is crucial to our success. So the first element of the struggle is the Palestinian struggle for liberation, of course. But there's another stage or another part of the struggle as well. And that is, like in South Africa, the ANC and the Black African community understood that the whites are going to remain. The Asians are going to remain. You know, the liberation of South Africa did not mean simply that the Black African population, the country belongs to them. But very early on, the ANC said, South Africa belongs to all of us. We're all South Africans. We want a non-racial society. And the group that I'm involved with, you'll hear from Awad Abdel Fattah, who's the chair of our group. The One Democratic State campaign is really saying the same thing. We understand, whether it's good or bad, that the Israeli Jews and others are going to stay in this country, even after liberation. And therefore, the second stage of the liberation struggle is to construct one democratic state of equal rights for everyone that's inclusive of everyone living in this country, and of course, the return of the refugees. So that we have a vision, we have a plan. We're trying to work here in order to create that infrastructure that will then empower you to better support us. Because obviously, you're in a position in which you can advance the Palestinian struggle and the struggle for one democratic state internationally, which is key, but you have to be empowered by the vision and the plan that the people here in this region bring forward. And so I think my comrades here really welcome this initiative. It's a key to mobilizing the international society. And I think the idea of taking Al-Andalus as a vision, I added in some ways the Ottoman Empire to that as well, which was a huge empire, but very tolerant, in which many people lived together. It was not a conflictual kind of a place. So there are models, and even local models in the Middle East, in terms of where we could be going and visions. And the Convivencia Alliance, I think, gives a vision to people that will make it much easier for them to link up to the Palestinian struggle and to our struggle for liberation, inclusive liberation, here in historic Palestine. So again, I want to congratulate the initiators of this of the Convivencia Alliance. We look forward to working with you. I look forward to working with you. I know many of you, and so I'm very happy to be able to support this initiative that I think is very crucial and is something we desperately need here in the region. So thank you very much, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Very positive message of support from Jeff Halper, and as he said, the next person who's going to be giving his message is Awad Abdul Fateh from One Democratic State. Again, it's something that's been launched by the Israelis and the Palestinians together.
Dear comrades, in such horrific times as we live in, where state violence and grave injustices are unfolding in many places on this planet, it is not to be taken for granted that people like you are challenging despair by embarking on proactive political initiatives like the Convivencia Alliance. I therefore congratulate you for this novel initiative. I am honored to put my signature on its charter. It was exciting to read your document drawing on the remarkable historical experiences of coexistence from Andalusia in the Golden Age to Palestine before the European invasion and Zionist colonization. Palestine is a just cause, and it is the last case of colonialism that remains from the 19th century imperial powers. Yet support for the Zionist settler colonial entity built on the ruins of the Palestinian people continues among the new imperial powers of today, the United States and Britain in particular. They obstruct any attempt to end this grave injustice by extending financial, political, and military support for this rogue entity and shielding it from accountability. I am speaking on behalf of the One Democratic State campaign. In late 2017, a group of Palestinians and progressive Israelis, intellectuals, academics, and activists met in Haifa and decided to launch a new campaign for one state in all of Palestine, where Palestinians and Israelis can live together in a decolonized and egalitarian polity. We thought it was a time to integrate all groups and individuals who have been advocating for decolonization as the solution for the Palestinian cause. We are trying to provide a clear vision of the future of Palestine, as well as a political discourse of hope for the young generation. We draw on the work that others have been done toward this solution, including some of the initiators of the Convivencia Alliance. We have produced the outlines of a political program and are now in the process of reaching out Palestinians everywhere in order to build a popular peace. Our priority now is to communicate our vision and program among the Palestinian public, expand our working relationship with our progressive anti-Zionist allies, and to mobilize support for our struggle in the international community. For that, the Convivencia Alliance will be crucial. The path on our struggle for liberation and justice will be long and difficult, requiring resilience, wisdom, and courage, a clear political vision and program, and real cooperation with all forces and groups who struggle with us, you of the international grassroots at the head. We congratulate you on the launch of the Convivencia Alliance and look forward to working with you as we pursue our dream, our political program towards a free Palestine in solidarity. Awad Abdel Fattah.
Okay, again, that breadth and depth continues. I would now like to ask the next video to be put up, a video message from Rifat Cassis, Kairos, Palestine, director of the main church denominations in Palestine and based in Jerusalem.
Dear sisters and brothers, dear friends, I salute you on this day for the courageous step of launching the Convivencia as a cross-faith international initiative for a just peace in the Middle East. This initiative comes at the right time as Israel is advancing its racist and apartheid policies against the Palestinians and rejecting the right of the Palestinian people for self-determination. It comes at a time where all of us need to intensify our efforts to stop the bloodshed and the Israeli colonial measures against the Palestinian and the land of Palestine. It also comes at the time we all see the weakness of the official international community, including the UN and its accountability mechanisms. Furthermore, many countries in the EU and elsewhere are creating laws to criminalize our resistance, including the non-violent movement of BDS, and equating it with anti-Semitism. And some countries in the Arab world are normalizing their relations with the apartheid Israeli regime at the expense of justice to Palestine. Unfortunately, our internal relations are not any better. The Palestinian leadership is corrupt and split, and the Palestinian people have little trust in the official international community. With no resolution between the two sides in sight, still the Palestinians are full of hope for a better future. Equipped with our hope, determination, longing for freedom, and with the solidarity of all peace and justice-loving people all over the globe, we will overcome. Israel knows that its power and impunity are greater when people feel weak and hopeless. Israel knows, too, that its dominance is easier to maintain when it can keep convincing the international community that Israel is being attacked and its existence is at stake. That's why this hopeful and peaceful initiative today comes to add to our hope. We wrote in Cairo's Palestine document, despite bloodshed and hardship and injustice, there are people and communities just like you who dream of a new land and a new human being, capable of rising up in the spirit to love each of his or her brothers and sisters. That's why Cairo's Palestine welcomes this initiative and joins it.
Okay, so now we're going to move away from Palestine briefly, and I would like to ask the next video to be put up of Mick Napier from Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign on his perspective on the Convivencia Alliance.
Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign warmly welcomes the Convivencia initiative, and a big thanks to those who've done the spade work to drive it forward to the stage of an official launch. It is an axiom of political Zionism that Jews cannot live among others as a minority, but must relocate to a Jewish state somewhere in the world. And Palestine, unfortunately, was the place that was finally chosen. The Haganah murdered Jacob Dahan in 1924 for leading a key section of indigenous Palestinian Jews against the Balfour Declaration on the basis that they should live in a state of equality and neighbourliness with Muslims and Christians in Palestine, as had been the case for an extremely long, a very prolonged period. As late as 1948, in the full fury of ethnic cleansing underway, thousands of Orthodox Jews demonstrated in Jerusalem for peace, for a ceasefire, on the basis that they wanted to live with Palestinian communities, Muslim and Christian, as neighbours and not in a Jewish supremacist state. People strive to live in a humane and human way, even among the most vicious political and social systems. The Convivencia initiative, by excavating the past, the glories of Andalusia under Muslim rule, the history of Palestine, of inter-communal well-being and living together, can use the past to illuminate the future, where people in Palestine will be able to live not in a state of supremacy of one group over another, but in a state of political equality. Warm greetings again to the people who are driving forward the Convivencia initiative, and we look forward to cooperating fully in that excellent effort.
Okay, so another perspective, and now, as they say, going across the pond, Professor Ramon Grosfagel is the next video message of support that's being put up. He is part of the Decoloniality International Network, and he'll be saying a few words on his perspective and thoughts on Convivencia.
I want to strongly support the initiative by the Islamic Human Rights Commission on the project of Convivencia together with other organizations. The project of Convivencia is inspired in the history of Al-Andalus as part of Islamic civilization in the south of Europe, where there was a golden age period where Muslims, Jews, and Christians lived together in a peaceful way, in a respectful way, respecting the rights and the faith and the institutions of each of the communities during Islamic civilization in what is known as Al-Andalus. This is a project that I encourage and I support because it's bringing back to the present important aspects of how we should relate with each other into the future. Specifically, this encounter between Christian, Jewish communities, and Muslims, they have in common many things, but especially the question of justice. And this question of justice is related to the contemporary challenges that we face, and bringing convivencia in relation to justice, and especially in relation to justice in Palestine, is, I think, a very important initiative that we should all support and encourage. So I want to congratulate the organizations and the people who are involved in this project, and would like to wish the best to this project, and to send my full support in anything I can be of help. Thank you.
So that was Professor Ramon Grosfagel from University College, Berkeley, California, saying a few words. Now I would like to invite Naomi Bimbo and Idrisi, anyone who is involved in the issue of Palestine, but I'm sure know Naomi very well. So thank you, welcome for speaking. You're welcome.
Yes, hi. We've got a bit of a shortage of ladies, if I may mention. Yes, can people hear me all right? Yes? Okay, that's great. I'm here in a personal capacity because Jewish Voice for Labour has an orientation which isn't particularly relevant to what you're doing, the local Labour Party. Are you still not managing to hear me? I'll try. Okay, so obviously this initiative is of considerable interest to anybody who wants to see peace and justice in the Middle East. But I thought we should have a quick look at the existing organisations which purport to be creating interfaith dialogue with that commendable goal in mind. And I'm just going to list a few, not go into any detail, but we have, of course, Tony Blair's Interfaith Foundation. We have the Three Faiths Forum, which has been renamed Faith and Belief Forum. It sounds great, but I have personal experience, and Diana over there may remember in our area a few years ago, there was a Three Faiths Forum initiative to do with organic food, environmentally friendly products, and a Palestinian speaker was invited. It was banned by the local Jewish community, who said that this would be racist and unacceptable. So that's one kind of faith forum that is not very constructive. The Council of Christians and Jews, again, a very optimistic sounding name, but I remember them attacking, almost physically attacking, initiatives that we were involved in the old days to celebrate what goes on in Bethlehem now, the lives of Palestinians in Bethlehem at Christmas time. Linda's nodding, she remembers that. We were attacked by the Council of Christians and Jews, again, for taking the wrong side in the conflict. We have something called Christians United for Israel. That sounds like Christians who are friendly towards Jews, doesn't it? But we know, I'm sure many of you know, what their activities are. I mean, deeply racist and pro-Zionist. More respectable, perhaps, is the Wolf Institute, based in Cambridge, which has a lovely program of interfaith understanding, but includes within it material which is pro-Zionist. So these are all projects which fall down because they don't see that any sustainable solution must be anti-colonial and anti-racist, and therefore anti-Zionist. Most of them are actually explicitly opposed to such an analysis. And in fact, both Masood and Ramon, who we heard just now on video, mentioned that. So justice and equality are absent from their approach. So who does present an approach to the issue of Palestine, the oppression of Palestinians? Well, of course, it's human rights and international legally based groups. For example, Amnesty, B'Tselem, Human Rights Watch, many Palestinian groups such as the Institute for Middle East Understanding, Al-Shabaka, and all the pro-Palestinian and BDS groups that you'll be familiar with. But of course, they are not interfaith groups. So what I hope I've identified is a gap in the market for convivencia. What we need is, although there are some Muslim and very few Christian groups, for example, the Amos Trust, which are based on justice and equality, overwhelmingly, these values are not shared by groups that are either posing as interfaith or groups that are active in support of Palestine. So you have a gap in the market. So your project needs to make this very, very explicit. Look at the deficiencies of the existing interfaith dialogue. And there are key points that are in your statement. But just to quickly run through them, they tend to normalize racism and settler colonialism. They accept the language of Zionism as Jewish self-determination. Like Jeff Halpern pointed out, they tend to call for a two-state solution, ignoring freedom, justice, and equality for Palestinians. They tend to promote the IHRA definition, which equates opposition to Zionism with hatred of Jews. They give cover to the Christian Zionism, which is behind much interfaith Jewish activity. And they tend to perceive interfaith, and again, somebody else has already said this, as Zionist Jews working with people of other faiths to persuade them to identify with Zionism. So this is obviously what you are trying to counter. So just briefly to sum up, what we need to be doing under this wonderful project is to find a way forward for faith-based organizations to formulate and promote an explicit analysis based on a clear understanding that peace and coexistence depends on embracing justice for Palestinians. And that entails challenging two-states rhetoric and challenging the IHRA definition. And I'll leave it at that. I hope you
Thank you very much indeed, Naomi. I'm sure you'll be here for the question and answers and pick up anything. Love that idea of a gap in the market for peace and justice and across different faiths to be able to put together. So lovely concept that we've finally managed to fill that in the way that we're moving forward in the menu that we've picked perhaps for the future, as has been talked about in the menu earlier. Now I would like to invite Zuhair Baravi from Palestine Forum, Brother Zuhair Baravi, to say a few words from his perspective on the Convivencia Alliance.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be upon you all. Dear friends, comrades, brothers and sisters, good afternoon to every one of you. First of all, allow me to thank everyone who contributed to the completion of this wonderful document. which we as PFB have participated in some way in the preparations. At least a few of the meetings and consultations took place during the last year, and we congratulate you all for the launch of this important alliance. We Palestinians are very thankful to every single one of you in this room for supporting us and our just cause. And we hope to work together and with all believers in the principles and values contained in this initiative, whether religious or non-religious groups, to achieve harmony and cooperation between all in accordance with the values of justice and freedom, and in order to combat colonial Zionism in all its forms. And basically to work for justice and freedom for the Palestinian people who have been suffering for a century or more from colonialism, whether British or Israeli, supported until today by Britain, America, and other Western countries. We as Palestinian British Community Organization, PFP, specialized in supporting and defending Palestinian rights in British society, and we work to promote the Palestinian narrative of the conflict. We face many challenges in our work in Britain, and one of the most important challenges is the new definition of anti-Semitism, which is used as a weapon in the face of the supporters of Palestinians and the defenders of their rights, or in the face of those who criticize the policies of the apartheid state of Israel. We also watch closely the huge efforts made by the state of Israel and its lobby in this country to promote the Israeli Zionist narrative of the conflict, as well as their attempts to use interfaith groups to promote that narrative, as well as to use it to penetrate Muslim communities in Britain and to normalize Israel relations with mosques and Islamic institutions. We hope that this initiative will contribute to confronting these challenges and will constitute a more capable alternative to building relations between all components of society on the basis of the values of justice and freedom and the values of anti-racism, anti-occupation, including the racist and criminal Israeli occupation based on ethnic cleansing of our people in Palestine. The other point is that we as a Palestinian British NGO affirm that the final, just, or acceptable solution to the conflict is only the one determined only by the people of Palestine, or can only be achieved with their consent. It is clear to everyone in this room that the illusory two-state solution, which the Palestinians or some of their representatives accepted in 1993, has not been achieved despite the passage of 3 decades since Oslo. And it is clear that, or in this room, or who is following the politics of Palestine, who is rejecting the two-state solution and preventing that from implementation on the ground. Therefore, the failure of the two-state solution pushes the one-state solution to the fore and makes it more acceptable than ever, at least for a segment of the Palestinian people. We, as a Palestinian forum in the UK, PFB, do not officially adopt the one-state solution because of its many political complications. However, we see it as an idea or a principle that may lead to a more practical solution than others in the strategic term. I stop at this point and thank everyone once more and hope that together we can achieve the objectives of this alliance and this important initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Zohar for your comments and words of support for this important initiative. I think it's very clear from everything that has been said, the issue around colonization, the issue of apartheid, and also the issue of the convivencia, the togetherness. It puts everyone on notice in the UK, whether it's a mosque, a church, a synagogue, or a school of any of those faiths, that there are alternatives which have peace with justice at the core of how this alliance is going to work, to whom you can refer to in terms of getting a Jewish perspective, a Christian perspective, a Muslim perspective, in order to be able to work together with the concept of peace with justice, not with the absence of justice. And I think that's something that people who are listening online, institutions that are listening online, really need to take that on board in terms of the menu that we're going to serve up for the future, and the menu that we're going to choose for the future for our children, for our society, and the way that we're actually going to be able to move forward. I think the beautiful kind of contributions that have been made thus far make that very clear as to how we can look for a more peaceful and just world in the future and how we can move forward in that way. I hope I haven't detracted from anything that anyone has said and tried to put some of the things together and coalesce some of those things in the way that people have made those contributions. I will now open it up to the floor for any questions that that you would like to ask of any of the panelists. And I've been advised, and it seems like very sensible advice, that perhaps the way that the question should be posed, it should be, make sure that it's got a question mark at the end, and it was in one breath that you should be able to say everything that you're going to say so that it's nice and brief. Have I got that right, Stephen? So, okay. So if I can, first question from over there. Have you got a roving mic, or are you going to be able to?
I asked the same question myself. I was trying to be subtle in my presentation, and if you were reading between the lines, you'll have figured out why at the moment we don't yet have a British Christian organization within the alliance, or were able to identify a Christian leader from any denomination willing to participate at this moment. It's been so encouraging to have numerous Christian leaders, including bishops and an archbishop from Palestine, endorse the alliance, and there is a list on the website that gives you a list of 20 or more names of different faith leaders, as well as secular leaders, politicians and actors who are committed to assisting us move forward. So I was being polite and diplomatic in saying we hope that British Christian leaders, along with Jewish and Muslim leaders, will get behind the alliance, as I'm sure they will eventually. You may be old enough to remember Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu were regarded as terrorists by well-known leaders in the UK until a certain point occurred when the wind was blowing in a particular way and everyone changed their mind on apartheid. But it took, as Jeff said in his video, ordinary people to campaign for a change in South Africa. And we need to do the same here with Palestine.
Any other questions that people have? Okay, gentleman there.
Around kind of more concrete proposals. I get the idea that you're going for, but specifically in terms of concrete proposals that you're advocating for? Have you got anything like that, or is it still too early to say? And that's for everyone, I guess.
I know the question was for Reverend Sizer, but I think it's quite relevant to all of us of other faith as well, because the same conditions, more or less, exist elsewhere. There has been a witch hunt, and I don't buy the Zionists. There has been a witch hunt by the Zionists to sort of silence everyone at the first stage. A second stage is actually getting them to justify and legitimize their activities and their atrocities and their racism as the only way forward in solution in Palestine. And I think one of the work that we have to do is support the voices which are standing up for justice, be it from the secular platform or indeed the religious platform. And we know that overwhelming majority of ordinary people from any faith or none are supporters of justice for Palestine. That is being undermined by the leadership, and the Zionists are actually normalizing. I mean, there are a lot of documents, I'm sure you're aware, that they even say that part of the benefit of interfaith, from their perspective, is to actually normalize and silence people. Now, our job is to actually get people to say their truth, to stand up against injustice, to go against apartheid, even in 1 inch or centimeter of that land. It really is not an issue how far, what area, which year. Apartheid has got a certain legal connotation, and it needs to be removed, and indeed is a duty upon all of us. Those of us who come from faith background, it is our religious duty on top of the international duty to stand up. Those of us who believe ourselves as being humanists, it's our duty from that perspective. And this is why we are going to work together. This is why we are going to make sure that the alternative, as Naomi said, is available to every mosque, every church, every synagogue, to actually for people to speak the truth and to be encouraged for that.
Okay, that's great. So going back to the question that was just asked about practical steps, if I can take Chaim, then Stephen, then start with Chaim.
Just a few words on the first question of faith leaders and their support or otherwise. You notice that we have not managed to get not only Christian leaders but also Jewish faith leaders to support this yet. I am very heartened by our brothers from Neturei Karta that came, and I welcome you. And I hope that this will not be the last time we see you, and I hope the leadership will join the campaign. I'm sure they will. Now, I'm not a practicing Jew, but I come from religious background, actually quite religious, and I know from my years in early school that there are few words which are more frequent in the Hebrew Bible than shalom and tzedek, peace and justice. This is what the Hebrew God was standing for when this was written, and this is what the Hebrew God stands for now. And this is what we want to act. Now, as I think a number of us mentioned, I want to say that some of my Marxist friends asked me, why are you working with religious people? I think that's a very funny question. I'm working with my brothers and sisters because they are my brothers and sisters. And believe me, the campaign, the last 2 years of working on Convivencia together with the people at this table and others was the best political experience of my life. And because I come from a religious background, it is not strange or alien to me, but I have to say that we have become a family, as Masoud said, and we will stay and make that family grow, and we invite you into this growing family. Now, this is the first political act that we need to do. We need to say, we are all brothers and sisters, and the more people that join the campaign, and I'm the one editing the website, so every night I have to edit the website again because more people and more groups are joining. So this is great what is happening. So this is the first political act, that we are involved in, coming out, actually standing up and saying this is what we believe in today. And we took 2 years to get to this point because it's a very difficult process. We knew we will be attacked. If you are talking about peace and justice, you will be attacked. If you're talking about freedom for Palestinians, you'll be attacked. If you're talking about Jews, Christians, and Muslims living together, you'll be attacked. Okay, we are now ready for the attack. Bring it on. We will defend very easily this attack, against this attack. Now, you know from the tapes that you've seen that we are supported by very important people in Palestine. They might not be leaders of millions, but Jeff Halper, Awad Abdel Fattah, and Rifat Kassis are very important people in Palestine because people listen to them, not just Palestinians, but Jews. And we want to bring their message here. We want to bring their message to Jews, Christians, and Muslims in Britain. As was said, this is not just about Palestine. What about the racism and Islamophobia that we are now living with in the UK? Convivencia is the right answer to that as well. And you know, where is anti-Semitism, for example, in Britain? It's not against... the anti-Semites don't sit in the Labour Party. This is a lie, and everyone in this room knows it is a lie, and everyone listening online knows this is a lie. People that look like Jews are attacked by anti-Semites, not by left-wingers. But if you are dressed like our brothers that came here from North London, you are likely to be attacked, like Muslims are going to be attacked sometimes because they have wearing face covering, etc. So actually, there is a lot of Islamophobia and there is a lot of anti-Semitism, and we want to speak to that. We want to speak against such actions as part of the Convivencia Alliance. So this is not just about Palestine, but is mainly about Palestine. So first, we have not just Convivencia with you, but we have a Convivencia with the one democratic state. And as Zuhair so carefully explained, a lot of Palestinians are waiting for a chance to say, yes, we support the one democratic state, because this is not a position agreed to by the leadership, which is the same leadership that has done nothing to resolve the Palestinian problem since 1993. And especially after the death of Arafat, this is very, very clear. So this is not a leadership that was elected by the people of Palestine in the last 20 years. They are not calling for an election, but they are actually stopping the solution within the Palestinian people. Now, I'm saying this as part of the colonial regime. I'm not agreeing with it, but I am a Jew, an Israeli, and I come from the colonial side. But I don't agree with it. I will fight to the death until my death against that colonial regime and its racism. So coming together with churches, with mosques, with religious leaders in Palestine, and hopefully soon in Britain, and remember how difficult it was to bring religious leaders to fight against apartheid in South Africa. These things take time, And we are on day one. And we will continue with your help towards achieving what the South Africans achieved. I just want to say the one last thing about that. South Africans achieved the end of apartheid, but they did not achieve equality. Black people are not equal in South Africa. We don't want that kind of solution. We want equality and justice for Palestinians because we consider this a Jewish duty, a duty to peace and a duty to justice, which our religion is the one that gave that message to the world.
Okay, just to say we're coming towards the end. If I can just ask Brother Masood for practical steps. That was the basis of the question. Are there any thoughts on that?
If you look at your schedule, you'll see the answer really is under 5, which I'm sure Raza will emphasize. This is day one. This is the beginning, and we need your participation to help the initiative decide what are our priorities for this year, for the year after, and so on. We very much want to engage with you on practical ways in which we can bring about the realization of the spirit of Convivencia in Palestine especially, but also here in the UK.
Look, there is a position which I think is very important for us to have, and that is there is no solution to be demanded by the Zionists in a form of negotiation with them to find a solution for the future of Palestine. There's just no way. You can't, in the same way that we couldn't negotiate with the apartheid system in South Africa to bring a solution, a just solution. Here is the same. We do not see the future of Palestine as a sort of something that we could share with the Zionist ideology, apartheid, colonial system. Let us be very clear. I personally, I will not share a platform with the Zionists, except if you're debating. If you're debating, I will do it gladly, anytime, anywhere, any day. But I will not legitimize Zionists and sit with them on a platform. And this is something that we should do. We should demand, and we should indeed make that a sort of a policy. We are going to liberate people's minds from colonialism and from apartheid slavering, which has been systematically done by the Zionists and their infrastructure. They are putting huge pressures on people to silence them. We should liberate people so they could speak the truth. And I think these are the principles, not tactics, 1, 2, but the principles that we are going to sort of have. And, yet again, anyone else who joins us should be under no illusion. This is not going to halfway house with the Zionists to find a solution. That's not going to be a solution, and we all know it. Thank you.
Okay, final question.
I notice you talk a lot about churches, mosques, and synagogues. Can you hear me? I was thinking one of the most effective places to begin a Convivencia, it would be schools. But I realize that schools are being prohibited and being used by the prevent mechanism not to discuss this. But there are most education there are a lot of opportunities in extras classes which are run by often volunteers on different days, where I think it might be possible to tell children or somehow to engage children with the ideas, because I think children and education is vitally important. We've got to look at our new generation on this.
Yes, hi, sorry, I'll come to the front because I'm behind a pillar otherwise. Yes, I have been involved with trying to bring education into schools, and it is extremely difficult because if any school, if it was become known that people like us were talking to children, the school would probably be shut down. So, but I think there definitely, Diana, I totally agree with you. I mean, people like you and me, through friends who work in education, could find ways of getting in, of communicating with children who want to hear a message which is about freedom and justice and equality. They don't just want to hear the correct political line handed down from Tel Aviv or from Downing Street, do they? So I think it's a very good question about education, and if there's any way I can help in taking it forward, I will. Yeah, we should talk about it.
That's great. Is this something that people want to take? Okay. If I can just add to what Naomi has said, there's also, you talked about the gap in the market, as it were, and in schools, you might remember the letter that was sent out to schools following last year's events in Palestine, if I can put it lightly in that way. The solutions, not sides, being promoted, and particular organizations being promoted with particular agendas with regards to this particular issue. So again, it's an uphill battle, but certainly that I think we all agree is something that needs to be fought in terms of trying to get those messages across in this kind of a way where we have got something going on in that term. I would also like to point out that something that the IHRC, Masood Bhai just reminded me, was the Genocide Memorial Day, which also includes a poetry competition for 11 to 18-year-olds on the issue of genocide, which could also be promoted, which is a way of looking at decolonization, which is a way of looking at genocide, which is a way of looking at how people can actually combat the steps that lead up to genocide and so on, that people might well be interested in. Could I ask also, Haim, if you could say a few words on that?
I'm also an educationalist and worked in universities and schools all my life. And I want to remind you that this evil government has written to all universities demanding, not suggesting, not offering, but demanding that the IHRA is adopted by the university, and if not, you'll lose your money. Now, most universities until now have joined the IHRA as a result of unthinking, I don't know what name to give that. Stupidity, I think, is the correct name. And also unthinking about the future. That means that you cannot actually teach or allow people to speak in a university if you're not supporting Israel and its war crimes and racist positions. I come from SOAS, which a name of many of you know, and in SOAS the staff got together and clarified to the head of the college, who usefully is a South African black person who fought against apartheid. So this was not news to him. And it was very welcome for him to hear that we, the staff at SOAS, do not accept and will not accept the IHRA as a definition of anti-Semitism, and we will not accept it being imposed on us. And we have written our own charter against racism rather than just against anti-Semitism. And we, until now, got away with it. I think it will be dangerous for the government to make an example of us and cut the money. And some universities are now following it. So actually the education area, so important to all of us, is actually barred from our speech, peace speech. Hate speech is invited into universities. Peace is not welcome.
Thank you for that. I think with the breadth of things that have been talked about in the market that's out there, as it were, a lot of things that need to be done in terms of the way that we can move forward. And I would like to remind you of what was on the program in terms of the Convivencia initiative and what's going to be happening on Saturday at 2 p.m. on Sunday the 17th of July and how to be promoting that. But I'll leave that for David Cannon to say a few words to round up and finish off the proceedings.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone. Yes, it's my job to wrap things up. And before I send you on your way home, I just want to stress that we've spent 2 years poring over this document with meticulous detail. And as Masood says, we've formed a very strong bond, and it's a bond that's not going to go away. It feels like this is the culmination of the 2 years, but in fact, it's just the beginning. And we are going to increasingly rely on people like you to get this message out. We can only do so much ourselves. So we've put in on the program the date and time, 2 o'clock on the 17th of July, venue to be confirmed. We are determined to have a series of events following this so that we don't lose momentum, but we do rely on you coming forward with your connections, your networks, whether it's in a church, a synagogue, or whether it's a community centre. We want to reach out and have more meetings like this and explore in some practical detail how we can promote the ideas of convivencia, because we all realise how important they are. So thank you again for coming on this nice sunny day, and safe journey home. Thank you again.